I just watched a Harvard talk made in the last few days between former National Security Advisor Fiona Hill and some other guy about Ukraine. And the strategic situation is that the areas of NATO that actually border Russia, Estonia, some areas in the Baltic, um, Norway, are very small. They don't have much of a border with the NATO states, and the invasion of the Ukraine on the exaggerated premise that NATO ships were pulling into the Black Sea and might harbor covert purposes of NATO direction. Pardon my attire. This is a very dog-eared shirt that I'm wearing because I'm home today. I wasn't planning to go out. I know this is a public video. Um, Round of some of the issues that I would have preferred to raise on behalf of consideration of Russia's point of view pointless. Navalny said Putin's just a bully. There's no point in trying to reason with him about what's going on between America and Russia. But George Kennan, who authored the domino theory that I've always protested, um, was concerned. He was working with Nikita Khrushchev's niece, our granddaughter, and that we were pushing Russia by encroaching on them too rapidly without consideration of their point of view. And I would have liked to have worked on that, but the Ukraine sort of pushed that off the table. The invasion of the Ukraine sort of pushed that off the table. Fiona Hill's key remark was that the domino theory is still greatly in effect for the Russian mind, whereas America has gradually, because of pressure from academics to show some sincerity, forced out the old Cold War formulas of the CIA and American thinking. Um, Trump didn't have any considerations of those matters at all. He didn't lean on the establishment one bit. Russia is still playing to the idea that those are the considerations that matter most to the United States. Those are the considerations that are still in place, so they can sort of scratch at old scars to scare us about saying they'll put missiles in Cuba, hypersonic weapons in Cuba. And this is the way they're thinking. But you see, Putin comes from the charm school of European dictators. What that means to me is he had Oliver Stone eating out of his hand. And the way that he did that was by putting forward that he was a reasonable person, that he was interlocular with, he would stand up and talk to American journalists who would ask him questions that were of a very direct nature. Often they were brusque and stupid questions that, came from the pinheaded minds of Western media. And he took them as that, but he fielded them. Other times there were people who sort of were forthcoming, as I was hoping to be, about, the situation of Russians in Donbass being attacked. I was learning about it. I don't know that much about it, honestly, but I do know there were things about Russia that are very interesting that have been considered off limits. They're off limits again now because of the boycott. But I read a lot of Mikhail Bakhtin. I was interested in the figure skating team at the Olympics. I've always liked figure skating, and they had quite a storyline this time. The emotional texture of it was very interesting. And the idea that Russia could become part of the Commonwealth of Nations where we work together on a united front of common sense was something that has informed the friction in my life from the time I first began editorializing at the University of Pittsburgh's Pitt News. I mean, we would get envelopes that were solicitors from the Soviet Union, and I didn't touch them not because I didn't want to know what they had to say. I figured they were just things, you know, but because there's time sensitiveness, the conservative mind would have was already jumping all over me simply for putting up ending hunger issues, ecology issues, vivisection issues, for questioning the righteousness of Iran Contra, the invasion of Central America. These were issues that were issues of conscience. We were just started, we didn't have the internet yet, but it was coming. What are we going to do to help people sort out truth from falsehood? Are there going to be World Health Organization access points that can inform the third world of information they need to know of a medical nature, for example? What's available in vitamins and what do they do and so forth? And one character from green architecture actually picked up on what I was saying. When he went into the Peace Corps, he sent me a picture of a native with a modem on his lap because he knew that I would like enjoy the picturesque quality of the interaction of advances that could potentially be a hybrid for human safety and a united front of common sense. And so I've always put up a fight against the Cold War mentality, the grind that says until you are focused on Russia as being a totalitarian regime that's capable of nothing but harm, you might as well give up all hope of persuading anybody of anything. And these were people I knew to be evil idiots who had attacked me blindside as a child, who had marched all over, Vietnam. So what Fiona Hill says is, it's too fishy to be pigeonholed on the basis of conscience about America's hypocrisy when you're being asked to subordinate concerns like the invasion of the Ukraine. I mean, there's nothing morally balancing about bombing a maternity ward. That's simply wrong. It's not good when they do it. It's not good when we do it. And the idea of having black ship, white ship, black ship, white ship. If you shoot an innocent person, I'm going to shoot an innocent person too to get even with you, when the first actor doesn't care about innocent people, apparently, enough that they shot an innocent person in the first place. So it's pointless for Putin to carry on about these issues. We have to get, Chomsky says, get your own house in order before you start criticizing somebody else. We only have one house. We need a united front of common sense. That's why I joined the Fridays for Future movement. Now, the question that came up that was very interesting to me, I had to stop watching the video to think about it for a second, was the way Joe Manchin, who's overcompensating, let's close the aerospace. I mean, it's just a long-headed trip dude from West Virginia, says the Biden apparent weakness in what she called the shambolic withdrawal from Afghanistan. We've been relocating refugees and doing our level best to keep tabs on the starvation, which is very serious in places like Yemen and Afghanistan. We need to support Doctors Without Borders. Now, Biden puts a lot of energy into encouraging people to be helpful in areas like Doctors Without Borders, World Central Kitchen. He's, aware of their marvelous actions in feeding people, whether it's a typhoon, an earthquake, and so on. Whether it's Haiti or the Ukraine or anywhere else, they don't discriminate. They go where people are in need of food and try to help. These are the kinds of people who come from like the Ignacio Saloni school, which is, I don't need much, just give me a chance with the little I have. The workers of the world, people who just have very little, but can do a great deal with what little they have if given even half a chance. And when somebody comes and says, I see the hypocrisy of the United States, some people are jumping harder. Hey, somebody sees the hypocrisy of the United States, and then they turn out to be hypocrites too. So it gets it's the charm school of European dictators. You know, what we need to do is start seeing fishiness as for fishiness, whether it comes from on high in America. And Joe Manchin's decision to go promoting pictures of him at a shooting club to explain his sabotage of Build Back Better, which weakened Biden even further, even worse than his consideration of what are we doing in Afghanistan. It was questioning, was that putting out a red carpet to Putin? I don't think it was, but I don't think it helped the Manchin sabotage Build Back Better, because what we need is a united front of common sense. We're dealing with climate change. You know, Obviously, in the realm of common sense, these European dictators from the charm school have nothing to sell. They dropped the flash bomb on a huge nuclear power plant. Nobody's ever going to forget that. That's unforgettable. And you're not going to see students lining up to enroll in the University of Moscow after this. I mean, it's common sense that Russia needs to be saved by caring about what Russian culture is. It's not just the strategic, titanic idea of keeping NATO out of the Black Sea. I mean, if you talk to somebody like that, as a courtesy, we'd say, of course, we'll keep NATO ships out of the Black Sea. It's a courtesy to Russia. Russia, the Black Sea goes back, to the ancient days of Russia. Fiona Hill was saying Frederick the Great or something. I don't study at Harvard. I don't know all of the issues. I was just getting my mind around what was happening in Donbass. Of course, I found Mikhail Bakhtin. He's a brilliant scholar who's been blacked out because he survived under Stalin. What's that got to do with the scholarship? He's brilliant. But the point is that somebody like me connects to the charm school of European dictators, and we think, well, it's going to be all right because somebody with some sense is in power. Putin doesn't have any sense. He doesn't have any sense. He knocked out a maternity ward. He doesn't see. The thing is that we have to get our mind around what it is the problems are. One of the primary problems is the legendary long-headedness of the United States towards the so-called communist world. There's so many things that go on beneath the surface in those areas of culture and knowledge and peopleness that we refuse to entertain or understand. Culture, look at racism for a minute. We all know, we've agreed and come to the conclusion that racism is the problem. Where does racism come from? It doesn't come from the eye of the white man. It comes from the culture that teaches the white man to believe that he is superior to somebody simply because they're black. It's a cultural phenomenon. And when we stereotype Russian culture as something that's bleak, we wave away opportunities, golden opportunities, which was the glasnost era was. The glasnost era that had just been brought to a dead stop. What Putin says, we were talking about what our issues were. We were talking what our issues were, and nobody said anything. Nobody responded. I know that that's probably true. I believe that. But he's from the charm school of European dictators. He's just turned out to be using that as a you know a false flag for his opportunism, because there's nothing good about what he's doing to Ukraine. I'm not endorsing that one bit. But the point is in order to understand what's happening, you have to go back, not to saying Putin must be a really level-headed guy. He must be enlightened. He must be in tune. He must be courageous and engaging, because we know that's not true. But go back to the issues that we refuse to acknowledge and have a united front of common sense about them. Build on the fact that we admit that we made an error in not recognizing some certain kinds of considerations are due to Russia, especially after what they succeeded in doing when they instituted that period of glasnost and pulled down the Berlin Wall. You know, that was a golden opportunity that we lost because of our intractable refusal to be engaging of the issues. And one of the ways to be engaging of the issues is to learn something about what's going on. You know, I'm not saying we mustn't lose the opportunity to be diplomatically oriented simply because we've come up against the European dictator who can't be appeased. We can't turn ourselves back into robots of anti totalitarianism who have a touch of totalitarian stupidity about ourselves, which is what I've been saying for years and years and years and years, which is why I had the maddest hope that the issue could be resolved peacefully through diplomatic engagement. You know, it's pretty rough to see it come unhinged at a time when we really need a united front of common sense.